5. Explanation. The first paragraph is about the inhospitable environment of the Galapagos Islands and explains that the islands were colonized by one or more tortoises from mainland South America. There is no heading about the environment. Colonize can be considered the same as populate. Moreover, the author claims this inhospitable environment is home to the giant Galapagos tortoise. Hence, one or more tortoises from mainland South America populated the islands. Heading 5 is most appropriate for this paragraph. Paraphrased words: colonize, populate. Explanation. In paragraph B, the author mentioned what happened to the tortoises after human arrival, and those are negative impacts for the tortoises, such as taken on board these ships to act as food supplies. They, humans, hunted the tortoises and destroyed their habitat to clear land for agriculture, and so on. All of these can be considered as the disadvantage of tortoise populations, while the human arrival and settlers came to the islands can be seen as developments. Therefore, the heading for this paragraph has to be heading 3, developments to the disadvantage of tortoise populations. Explanation. Paragraph C is about a tortoise breeding center with its captive breeding program. Work began on this program in 1989 and is dedicated to protecting the island's tortoise populations. Hence, this program was the starting point for tortoise conservation. Heading 8, the start of the conservation project, is the most appropriate. Paraphrased words: start, begin. Program, project. Protect tortoise populations, conservation. Explanation. Paragraph D told us about an exact point at about 5 years of age, at which their size and weight, and their hardened shells, are sufficient to protect them from predators. And the author claims, but if people wait too long after that point, the tortoises eventually become too large to transport. That means we need to find the perfect timing for captive-bred tortoises to be reintroduced into the wild. Hence, heading 1, the importance of getting the timing right, is the answer. Explanation. In this paragraph, the writer mentioned repatriation efforts, which refers to every endeavor to bring tortoises back to the islands. The author also tells us that at first, this work was done in small numbers, but then it was decided to work out more ambitious reintroduction. They brought 300 of the breeding center's tortoises back to their islands by helicopter. It was a much bigger number, based on a bigger idea. Therefore, heading 4, planning a bigger idea, is the heading of this paragraph. Note: you may be confused between heading 4 and heading 7, looking for a home for the island's tortoises. However, this is repatriation, which means taking back to the place where they used to be. They are not looking for any other home. Hence, heading 7 is inappropriate. Paraphrased words: more ambitious, bigger. 6. Explanation. The three remaining headings are carrying out a carefully prepared operation, keywords, carefully prepared, operation, looking for a home for the island's tortoises, keywords, look for, home, and young meets old, keywords, young, old, meet. Paragraph F is about the preparation to use a helicopter to bring tortoises back to their islands. The author mentioned, during a period of 3 days, a group of volunteers from the breeding center worked around the clock to prepare the young tortoises for transport. In addition, we are told that groups of volunteers spent some time on the islands before the tortoises arrived, clearing sites for the helicopter to land. There is no line about looking for a home or young meets old. Therefore, heading 6, carrying out a carefully prepared operation, is the most suitable one for this paragraph. Two. Explanation. In the second sentence of this paragraph, the author mentioned, eventually, one tiny tortoise came across a fully grown giant who had been lumbering around the island for around 100 years. One tiny tortoise refers to young, while a fully grown giant means old, about 100 years old, in fact. And came across means to meet by accident. Hence, young meets old is the heading for this paragraph. Paraphrased words. Come across, meet. Pirates. Keywords. 17th century, small numbers, taken, ships. Explanation. 17th century is mentioned in the second sentence of paragraph B, so we have to pay attention to this part. From the 17th century onwards, pirates took a few on board for food. A few refers to small numbers, and on board refers to on ships. We can paraphrase this sentence like this: from the 17th century onwards, small numbers were taken onto ships for food by pirates. Paraphrased words. A few, small numbers. Food. Keywords. 1790s, large numbers, whaling ships, kept, to produce. Explanation. The next part of paragraph B is about what happened after the arrival of whaling ships in the 1790s. That is, relatively immobile and capable of surviving for months without food or water, the tortoises were taken on board these ships to act as food supplies during long ocean passages. The tortoises were taken onto ships to act as food supplies. That means they were kept for food. Oil. Keywords. 1790s, large numbers, whaling ships, kept, to produce. Explanation. The next part of paragraph B is about what happened after the arrival of whaling ships in the 1790s. The author mentioned sometimes their bodies were processed into high-grade oil. Processed into high-grade oil are means used to produce high-grade oil. However, they allow one word only, so we have to choose the most important word, oil, as the answer for question 10. Settlers. Keywords: hunt on islands. Explanation: the author mentioned the word hunt later in paragraph B. They hunted the tortoises and destroyed their habitat to clear land for agriculture. We have to look at the previous sentences to find out who they refers to. In total, an estimated 200,000 animals were taken from the archipelago before the 20th century. This historical exploitation was then exacerbated when settlers came to the islands. Obviously, they are settlers who came to the islands. Species. Keywords: habitat destruction, not native, fed on, tortoises. Explanation: they not only hunted tortoises and destroyed their habitat to clear land for agriculture, but settlers also introduced alien species, ranging from cattle, pigs, goats, rats and dogs to plants and ants, that either prey on the eggs and young tortoises or damage or destroy their habitat. The last sentence of paragraph C. The word alien means coming from a different country, race, or group, which is the same as not native to the islands. The author referred to those alien species that damage or destroy their habitat, which means the same as habitat destruction. The answer for question 12 is species. Those species also prey on eggs and young tortoises. Prey on means feed on, and young tortoises refers to baby tortoises. Hence, what remains is tortoises' eggs, so the answer to question 13 is eggs. Paraphrased words: alien, not native. Destruction, damage or destroy. D. Keywords: acceptance, not all diseases, totally eliminated. Explanation: in paragraph D, the author mentioned some information about health geography and diseases. It is an increasingly important area of study in a world where diseases like polio are re-emerging, respiratory diseases continue to spread, and malaria-prone areas are still fighting to find a better cure. The words continue to spread and still fighting to find a better cures mean that humans cannot control the above-mentioned diseases and still need a better cure for them, which is the same as they are not totally eliminated. Later in the paragraph, we find a key statement: people will always be prone to illness. Paraphrased words: illness, diseases. C. Keywords: examples, physical conditions, human behavior. Explanation: in paragraph C, the author gives some examples. The human behavior referred to includes the massive number of cars being driven and the cutting down of forests. The physical conditions which have resulted in large cities are smog and pollution that cause asthma, lung problems, eyesight issues, and more. F. Keywords: reference, classify diseases, basis, extend, geographically. Explanation: in paragraph F, the author mentioned a way of categorizing illnesses and diseases. Categorize is the same as classify, which means to divide diseases into groups according to their type. Therefore, we have to pay attention to this part of the text, work to create a clear way of categorizing illnesses, diseases, and epidemics into local and global scales. Health geographers can map the spread of illnesses and attempt to identify the reasons behind an increase or decrease in illnesses. Categorizing into local and global scales can be understood as how far they extend geographically. Hence, the information in paragraph F matches the statement. Paraphrased words: classify, categorize. Spread, extend. G. Keywords. Reasons, level of access to healthcare, vary within a country. Explanation. In paragraph G, the writer mentioned a very large discrepancy between the options available to people. A very large discrepancy is the same as vary, and options available to people can be seen as the level of access. In the previous sentence, the author was talking about the availability or the lack of healthcare provision, so we can understand their level of access to healthcare. And the author named some reasons for this large discrepancy: different social classes, income brackets, and levels of education. Therefore, paragraph G contains information in the statement. Paraphrased words. Vary, a very large discrepancy. Options available to people, level of access. D. Keywords. Health geography, mixture, academic fields. Explanation. In the second sentence of paragraph D, the author claimed, health geography is the combination of, on the one hand, knowledge regarding geography and methods used to analyze and interpret geographical information, and on the other, the study of health, diseases, and healthcare practices around the world. Combination is the same as a mixture. It is a mixture of knowledge regarding geography, methods used to analyze and interpret geographical information, and the study of health, diseases, and healthcare practices. Those can be considered as different academic fields which, when combined, make a hybrid science, a science which is the product of mixing different disciplines. Therefore, the answer is D. Paraphrased words. Mixture, combination. B. Keywords. Type of area, a particular illness, rare. Explanation. In paragraph B, the author claimed, depending on where you live, you will not have the same health concerns as someone who lives in a different geographical region, and gave an example of a particular illness, malaria, in different regions. In tropical regions, malaria is widespread. However, in high-altitude deserts, this disease is much less of a problem. High-altitude deserts is a type of area, and much less of a problem means it is very unusual, or we can consider it as rare. Vaccinations. Keywords: certain disease disappeared thanks to better healthcare. Explanation. In the first sentence of the first paragraph, the author wrote, "Many diseases that affect humans have been eradicated due to improvements in vaccinations and the availability of healthcare." Diseases have been eradicated means people are able to get rid of those diseases completely, or we can say that those diseases have disappeared completely. Due to is the same as thanks to, and improvements refers to something better. In this sentence, the author mentioned two things: vaccinations and the availability of healthcare. Healthcare is mentioned in the statement already, therefore, what we are looking for is vaccinations. Paraphrased words: eradicate, disappear. Improvements, better. Antibiotics. Keywords: contact between people, lose usefulness. Explanation. In the next sentences of the first paragraph, the author mentioned contact between people. In a world that is far more globalized than ever before, people come into contact with one another through travel and living closer and closer to each other. As a result, superviruses and other infections resistant to antibiotics are becoming more and more common. The first sentence let us know that there is more contact between people, more globalized, come into contact with one another, closer and closer, and the second one showed its consequence, as a result, that is, superviruses and other infections resistant to antibiotics are becoming more and more common. Resistant to antibiotics means antibiotics are not useful to combat those superviruses and other infections. They are losing their usefulness since those superviruses are becoming more common. Mosquitoes. Keywords: disease-causing, most likely, found, hot, damp regions. Explanation. This gap needs a noun, something or someone that can cause diseases. In the paragraph about the disease called malaria, paragraph B, the author mentioned tropical regions that foster a warm and damp environment in which the mosquitoes that can give people this disease can grow. So, the writer tells us that mosquitoes that can cause malaria to spread in a warm and damp environment. Therefore, what we have to find out here is mosquitoes. Factories. Keywords: cause of pollution, burn, particular fuel. Explanation. In paragraph C, the author named some causes of pollution. They are the massive number of cars being driven, factories that run on coal power, and the rapid industrialization of some countries. Among them causes, factories is the word that relates to run on coal power, which means burns a particular fuel, coal, to be more specific. Therefore, the answer is factories. Forests. Keywords: The growth of cities, impact, nearby. Explanation. In the last sentence of paragraph C, the author explained why the rapid industrialization of some countries can cause pollution. The rapid industrialization of some countries in recent years has also led to the cutting down of forests to allow for the expansion of big cities, which makes it even harder to fight the pollution with the fresh air that is produced by plants. The expansion of big cities can be seen as the growth of cities. To make way for the growth of cities, they have to cut down forests. We can say it has an impact on nearby forests. Paraphrased words. Growth, expansion. Polio. Keywords. One disease, grow, after eradicated. Explanation. We need to find out the most appropriate disease, one which is growing. In paragraph D, the author mentioned some diseases that need a better cure. One of them is polio, which is re-emerging. Emerge means to appear, and re is a prefix used with the meaning again. We can understand that polio is a disease that can appear again, after being treated or eradicated. Therefore, the answer is polio. Mountain. Keywords. Physical barrier, prevent, reach a hospital. Explanation. The word needed is after an article and stands in front of a verb. Therefore, it has to be a noun. Hospital is mentioned once in the passage in paragraph G, in which the author took an example of people's attempt to assess the levels of healthcare. The writer states, it may be very difficult for people to get medical attention because there is a mountain between their village and the nearest hospital. What prevents people from getting to their nearest hospital is a mountain, a physical barrier. Therefore, the noun we're looking for is mountain. Dopamine. Keywords. Music, stimulate, brain's neurons, release, substance, two of the parts of the brain, associated, feeling. Explanation. In the last sentences of the second paragraph, the author wrote, the first thing they discovered is that music triggers the production of dopamine, a chemical with a key role in setting people's moods, by the neurons, nerve cells, in both the dorsal and ventral regions of the brain. As these two regions have long been linked with the experience of pleasure, this finding isn't particularly surprising. Trigger means to cause something to start, and can be considered as stimulate. It is said that music stimulates the production of a chemical called dopamine. A chemical is the same as the substance and production is the same as release. Therefore, dopamine is what we're looking for in question 27. After that, the author mentioned two regions of the brain and claimed they have long been linked with the experience of pleasure. Linked refers to associated, to be connected, and feeling means or experience. So, pleasure is the answer to question 28. Paraphrased words. Stimulate, trigger. Substance, chemical. Associated, linked. Parts, regions. Caudate. Keywords. Observe, neurons, area of the brain, active, before, favorite moments. Explanation. In the first sentence of the third paragraph, the author claimed that the dopamine neurons in the caudate, a region of the brain involved in learning stimulus-response associations, and in anticipating food and other reward stimuli, were at their most active around 15 seconds before the participants' favorite moments in the music. The phrase, "at their most active," is the same as particularly active, and region means area of the brain, so it is clear that such a region refers to the caudate. Therefore, the answer for question 29 is caudate. In the following sentence, it is said that the researchers called this the anticipatory phase. Here, this refers to the observation made by researchers concerning the participants' favorite music. The period at which something happens is a stage or a phase. Hence, the answer for question 30 should be anticipatory phase. Paraphrased words. Particularly active, at their most active. Area, region. Food. Keywords. Activity, this part of the brain, associated with expectation, reward stimuli. Explanation. Also in the first sentence of the third paragraph, the author described the caudate as a region of the brain involved in learning stimulus-response associations, and in anticipating food and other reward stimuli. Thus, involved in means associated with, and anticipate means to look forward to, which is the same as expect. Therefore, it can be understood that the reward stimuli expected by the caudate should include food, as the example given in the passage. Paraphrased words. To be involved in, to be associated with. Anticipate, expect. B. Keywords. Point, emphasize, first paragraph. Explanation. Looking at the first paragraph, it is claimed that sound stirs us at our biological roots, meaning that music can affect the listeners in a biological way. To demonstrate this, the author gave examples of some physical reactions that we may have when listening to our favorite music. The pupils in our eyes dilate, our pulse and blood pressure rise, the electrical conductance of our skin is lowered, and the cerebellum, a brain region associated with bodily movement, becomes strangely active. Blood is even redirected to the muscles in our legs. These are all big or intense physical changes that occur in our bodies when we listen to music. C. Keywords. View, Montreal study, second paragraph. Explanation. In the second paragraph, the author mentioned, although the study involves plenty of fancy technology, including functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, and ligand-based positron emission tomography, PET, scanning, the experiment itself was rather straightforward. The term, fancy technologies may mean the same as complex technology, but there is no information about whether it was unnecessary or not, so D cannot be the correct answer. Neither is B, because the author mentioned that the experiment itself was rather straightforward, not too simplistic. Further in the paragraph, it is stated that scientists were able to obtain an impressively exact and detailed portrait of music in the brain. So, exact means precise, and impressively means remarkably, so this information suggests that the Montreal study produced remarkably precise data. Hence, the answer is C. Paraphrased words. Exact, precise. Impressively, remarkably. A. Keywords. Interesting, results, Montreal study. Explanation. Because the questions follow the order of the text, and we already know the position of the answer to question 33, in the second paragraph, just pay attention to the following sections. In the beginning of the third paragraph, it is said that, what is rather more significant is the finding that the dopamine neurons in the caudate were at their most active around 15 seconds before the participant's favorite moment in the music. The fact that the caudate was particularly active before the musical climax can be considered the timing of participants' neural responses. This observation was followed by the author's question. The question, of course, is what all these dopamine neurons are up to. Why are they so active in the period preceding the acoustic climax? So, it can be inferred that the timing of this response of the neurons in the brain really caught his attention. In other words, he found it interesting. B. Keywords. Meyer's work, music and emotion. Explanation. By using the skim and scan skill, we can easily locate the word Meyer in the fifth paragraph. The first sentence mentioned, to demonstrate this psychological principle, the musicologist Leonard Meyer, in his classic book Emotion and Meaning in Music, 1956, analyzed the fifth movement of Beethoven's string quartet in C-sharp minor, Op. 131. Hence, to understand what this psychological principle refers to, we need to read the previous paragraph. The fourth paragraph explains the findings of the Montreal study, in which the participants' caudate neurons were at their most active a few moments before the climax of the music. It turns out that the most important part of every song or symphony is when the patterns break down, when the sound becomes unpredictable. If the music is too obvious, it is annoyingly boring, like an alarm clock. Numerous studies, after all, have demonstrated that dopamine neurons quickly adapt to predictable rewards. If we know what's going to happen next, then we don't get excited. Meyer is a musicologist, and his analysis of the music offers an explanation of why the brain is responding in this reward principle way. Therefore, it can be inferred that the author mentioned Meyer's book to support the Montreal study. D. Keywords. According Leonard Meyer, causes emotional response. Explanation. In the last paragraph, it is stated that, according to Meyer, it is the suspenseful tension of music arising out of our unfulfilled expectations that is the source of the music's feeling. The author then explained in more detail. Meyer argued that the emotions we find in music come from the unfolding events of the music itself. So, emotional response is not connected to A or C, the listener's memories or sympathies. This embodied meaning arises from the patterns the symphony invokes and then ignores. The unfolding events and the patterns the symphony invokes and then ignores both imply the unpredictable part of any musical piece, which is considered to be the most appealing. It is this part that makes the listeners want more and wait for more, therefore fully enjoy and be in sync with the music. Hence, when Meyer refers to the music itself and the patterns of the music, it can be understood that the internal structure is responsible for the listener's feelings attached to a musical composition. F. Keywords. Montreal researchers discover. Explanation. From question 34, we already know that in the Montreal study, scientists found that the caudate neurons were at their most active around 15 seconds before the participants' favorite moments in the music. The word before is the same as prior, and the participants' favorite moments can be considered as key points in the music. In addition, the fact that neurons were at their most active means that the level of neural activity had increased before those key points. Paraphrased words. Prior, before. B. Keywords. Studies demonstrate. Explanation. The author mentioned in the fourth paragraph that numerous studies, after all, have demonstrated that dopamine neurons quickly adapt to predictable rewards. If we know what's going to happen next, then we don't get excited. The word numerous means many. The two sentences suggest that if we can predict what's going to happen next, which means that the outcomes become predictable, then our brains do not get excited because dopamine neurons have already become familiar with, or adapted to, those outcomes, leading to decreasing neuron activity. Paraphrased words. Numerous equals many. E. Keywords. Meyer, analysis, Beethoven's music. Explanation. It is mentioned in the fifth paragraph that Meyer dissected 50 measures, bars, of the masterpiece, showing how Beethoven begins with the clear statement of a rhythmic and harmonic pattern and then, in an ingenious tonal dance, carefully holds off repeating it. To dissect means to analyze and interpret minutely, so Meyer's work can be considered an analysis of Beethoven's composition. This analysis shows that the musician held off, or delayed, the patterns that he had previously put in the beginning of the musical piece. Such delay keeps us listening, waiting expectantly for our reward, for the pattern to be completed. This has the same meaning as emotive music delays giving listeners what they expect to hear. C. Keywords. Earlier, theories. Explanation. It is mentioned in the last paragraph that earlier theories of music focused on the way a sound can refer to the real world of images and experiences. Therefore, real is the same as actual. Images means pictures and experiences can be understood as events, so this information can be paraphrased into earlier theories of music suggested that a sound can refer to actual pictures and events. Paraphrased words. Real, actual. Images, pictures. Experiences, events.